Alright guys, so for day 3 we talked about normal curve percentages, kind of just test our knowledge on what we learned from day 2. So we know that there are 3 different types of numbers that we need to know. 1 deviation away from the mean is 68% of the data. 2 deviations away is 95% of the data, and 3 deviations is 99.7. If we decide to go out to 4 deviations, that would be the full 100% of data. All right, so let's label my curve. It says label the mean and standard deviation of the curve and the percentages. So there's no numbers here, but we don't need them. My mean goes in the middle. And then I'm going to go 3 deviations out. It's okay that it's not completely lining up with the graph. Perfectly fine. So I know that from 1 deviation away from the mean, this is going to be 68%. So that means that this piece is 34 and this piece is 34. Right? Ignore that one piece is bigger than the other. We're just talking in sense of numbers. All right, and if we went, a different color here. Let's say we go out 2 deviations from the mean. 2 deviations would be 95%. All right, that means that each piece, once I subtract from 68, will be 13.5% each. All right, if I were to extend this to 3 deviations, this would be 99.7. So this would be 2.35% and this would be 2.35%. If I wanted to extend it out to 4 deviations, sorry, I forgot to write this in. Let me fix that for a second. All right, so we said if we were to go out to 4 deviations, that would be 100%. So that means that this little piece here would be 0.15 and this piece here would be 0.15. Okay, so those are my curves. All right, so your probability is the percentage of likelihood of an outcome occurring, 0% being that there is no likelihood, and 100% being that you have all likelihood. Let's look at example 1. Example 1 says, we carved pumpkins at our neighborhood club this past fall. The number of carvings per pumpkin averaged 12 shapes with a standard deviation of 2 shapes. All right, so my mean goes in the middle. They told us that the average was 12. And my standard deviation was 2. So if I were to draw out my deviations, at least out to 3, I'm going to subtract 2 and then add 2. All right, so it says, what is the probability of someone carving 10 to 12 shapes into their pumpkin? All right, so from 10 to 12 would be this orange piece here. So that would be 34%. What is the percentage of those who carved less than 8 shapes into their pumpkins? All right, well, less than 8, I have this pink piece and this piece here. And just for the sake of doing this, let's go ahead and take this out to 3 deviations. So this would be, or sorry, to 4, and this would be 20. to get the full 100%. It just makes our numbers better. All right, so below 8 would be all of those pieces. So that would be, let's see here, that's 34, 13.5, so 2.35 plus 13.4. Alright, I made a mistake. I think I have quarantine brain. Ignore this. It was already out too. So what would help me right now is if I were to go ahead and just draw in what each piece is. Then I really won't get confused. Alright, so what is the percentage of those who carve less than 8 shapes? So less than 8, that's 2.35 plus 0.15, which gives me 2.5%. All right, part C, what is the likelihood of someone carving 10 to 16 shapes? So 10 to 16, I'm going to start at 10, so I'm going to add 34. Plus 34. Let's see, 10 to 16, so I stop at 16. Plus 13.5. Alright, we're going to type that into our calculator to make sure we get the right answer. 34 plus 34 plus 13.5 gives me 81.5%. And then how likely is it for someone to carve less than 6 shapes or more than 16 shapes? So less than 6, our probability is 0.15, or less than 6 or more than 16 will be 2.35 plus 0.15, because I added this one and that one. So if you add up all of those numbers, 0.15 plus 2.35 plus 0.15, you're left with 2.65. %. So the important part here is that you are kind of memorizing what these numbers can be, because if you memorize 68, 95, and 99.7, then essentially you can also memorize the 34, 13.5, 2.35, and 0.15. Okay, then it'll make your percentages a lot easier to calculate. All right, example 2 says, but on average, across all age groups in 2017, Americans spent 140 minutes of their awake time to watch Netflix, Hulu, YouTube, listen to Apple Music, Spotify, and other movie and music streaming services. Of course, those numbers are going to be higher for 2020 with COVID-19 taking over, but this is based on 2017. So, assuming the standard deviation is about 30 minutes, label the curve below. My mean and my standard deviation. Well, my mean is going to be 140 minutes because that was the average, and my standard deviation is 30. All right, so let's label my curve. I start with the mean, which is 140. And then I'm going to draw out 3 deviations. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Alright, so if my standard deviation is 30, I'm going to subtract 30. So I get 110. And then 80. And then 50. As I'm increasing, I have 170. 200 and 230. All right, so it says if 200 students were surveyed, how many would spend between 110 and 140 minutes per day? So that would be here. okay, in this little slot. Give me 1 second. Hold on for a second. Okay, so when we do this, we're going to change our percent to decimals. So just to get started, I'm going to break down my curve. Alright, so if 200 students were surveyed, how many was spent between 110 and 140? Well, this is 34%. But we need to make it into a decimal, so that would be 0.34 times 200. 0.34 times 200 in your calculator, we're going to just type that in, because when it says how many, we need an actual number. So 0.34 times 200, that gives me 68. So out of the 200 students that were surveyed, 68 people or students would spend between 110 and 140. Okay, so we're still using these percentages, we're just changing them into decimals and then multiplying so we can get a whole number. Out of the 200, how many spent less than 80 minutes a day? So less than 80 minutes a day would be 2.35 and 0.15. So that's 2.5. And this is how we are going to change it. If we have 2.5%, we want to change it to a decimal, we go backwards 2 places. So that's 0.025. And then we're going to multiply that to 200. And that gives us 5. 5 people spent less than 80 minutes out of the 200. All right, part C. How many students spent less than 110 minutes or more than 230 minutes a day on digital media? All right, so let's find the percentage for less than 110. Less than 110 is 13.5 plus 2.35 plus 0.15. So that gives me 16%. Or more than 230 minutes. More than that would just be 0.15. So that would be 0.15%. So together it is 16.15%. If we move our decimal place over 2, that gives me 0.11615 times 200. And we get 32.3 people. We're just going to round that to 32 people. All right, and our last question, how many students spent between 170 and 200 minutes a day? So 107 to 200 minutes is 13.5%. If I want to make that into a decimal, it is 0.135%. Times 200, which is 27 students or people. Okay, so what's important for this lesson is make sure that you have your correct bell curve filled out, and then once you have that, then you can just add them up, change your percentage to a decimal, and then multiply by the number of total students.